Hello everyone, Blue here at Bluebears Games, and this week we're continuing the Blues Budget Battle Brews, I guess you can say plethora of builds for conventions and events that I'm going to be doing over the next couple months. And sorry that it's not Commander content, but unfortunately this is what pays the bills until, I get more subscribers and, get paid through YouTube or a sponsor. This is how I have to make my do. So this week's video, it's actually a very popular one. I've built this like 6 different times. It's a little different than the original build, but it's vampires. Straight, pure, simple, mono black vampires. So strategy is pretty simple. Put some dudes down. Most of the dudes in here have a life link or life gaining ability, but they also have a draining ability, so they can drain life from your opponent, give you life. Basic, simple. You can either attack, or you can just sit back and let your guys do the damage for you without ever having to attack. So let me explain how that works. We'll start with the Vampire Neonate. Now this is I don't know if I want to say upgraded, but this is a updated version from my original deck. Some of the cards in here are a little newer than the original deck. The technology I have is a lot better. At least I have lighting this time. But we'll start off and I'll show you. A lot of it's going to match the original deck that I had earlier, but the way I'm presenting it's going to look a lot better. So Vampire Neonate, 1 to cast 0/3. And this is what I mean by you're going to drain your opponent without having to attack. So his ability says pay 2 and tap him, and each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. Sitting back and waiting till the end of your opponent's turn while having blockers, you can just start slowly draining your opponent. Pretty simple and basic. I got 4 of them in there for that reason. But I also have lifelink stuff, and there is other things that'll happen with that lifelink. So, Child of Night, 2 to cast, 2/1 lifelinker. Simple and basic. Sky March Bloodletter. So 3 to cast, 2/2 with flying. This was in the original build. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent loses life and you gain a life. So again, you're killing your opponent without actually having to attack. For them. Silver Smoke Ghoul. So this deck can gain a lot of life, so this guy is actually pretty cool. So 3 to cast, 3/1. At the beginning of your end step, if you had gained 3 or more life this turn, you can return it from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped if it's in the graveyard. And then you can pay 2 and sacrifice it to draw a card. So repeatable card draw because this deck can gain a lot of life. Cool thing is this guy's actually a zombie vampire. I actually like this in both zombie and vampire decks. 2 of them. Blood Tracker. So 4 to cast for a 2/2. It has flying, because most, vampires should have flying anyway. You can pay a black and pay 2 life, put a +1/+1 counter on him. You should have an excess in life, at least if everything's going according to plan. But when he leaves the battlefield for any reason, he can die, he can be returned to your hand, doesn't matter how. He can be exiled as long as he left the battlefield. You can draw a card for each +1/+1 counter on him. So, quasi-card draw. Blood Bond Vampire, 4 to cast 3/3 whenever you gain a life, which you should do a lot. Put a +1/+1 counter on him. So he'll get bigger and bigger and bigger. Or she'll get bigger and bigger and bigger. Whatever. How's that? Epicure of Blood. So here's the thing. All that life gain, it's not technically enough to just do it one at a time to kill your opponent. It's a very long, drawn-out game. Epicure of Blood kind of hastens that process a little bit so you can kill your opponent faster. So whenever you gain life, each opponent loses a life. Now, it's each instance of life gain, not for each life that you gain. Keep that in mind. So each little iteration of gaining life will actually start draining your opponents faster, and I got 4 of them, so if all 4 are on the board for some reason, every time you gain life, they're losing 4 life. Champion of Dusk, again, when life is a resource, especially in vampire decks. When it enters the battlefield, you draw X cards and lose X life, or X is the number of vampires you control. For 5, and it's a 4/4. Now, why it doesn't have flying, I don't know. Bloodlord of Vazgoth, so 5 to cast, 3/3. It does have flying. Bloodthirst of 3. Bloodthirst just says if an opponent was dealt damage this turn, this creature enters the battlefield with 3 +1/+1 counters, and he gives your vampires Bloodthirst 3. So, very interesting. Makes your guys bigger. So in case you need to actually do combat damage, it'll work. Anawan the Ruined Sage, it's actually a staple in vampire decks, 5 to cast for a 4/3. Again, no flying, which is disappointing. But at the beginning of your upkeep, each player sacrifices a non-vampire they control. So you have all vampires, so you don't ever have to sacrifice anything. I've mentioned a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, it's possible, I have a new love for a different way of killing opponents' creatures. So, there are things like Fatal Push out there, sure, but sometimes you just got to kill something in a different way. Ulcerate. Give a creature -3/-3. Once a creature, and remember with Indestructible, this can kill them too, which is why I like this a little bit more sometimes. When their defense hits 0, it doesn't matter what they have, they die. So for 1, you can make it get -3/-3. Your focus is solely on that negative on the defense so that you can make sure that the creature dies. And then you lose 3 life because, again, it's an instant that's 1 to cast that's doing that. There are more in here that don't make you lose life. I got 2 of them. Dead Weight. Now, these are R's, not instants that do this, but, I mean, most of them are sorceries anyway. So it's the same thing, but for 1, you can give a creature -2/-2, and it's permanent. Hey, if they've got really big creatures out there that one of these wouldn't kill them, anything that gives them a negative wouldn't kill them, at least you can weaken them. Got 4 of them, and then I got Myra's Grasps, which give them -3/-3. So ways to control your opponent's creatures without actually, having to worry about them. And if you like good old-fashioned just kill your creature kind of things, destroy target tapped creature, it was assassinates. So in case they've attacked, then or they've used an ability, you can just assassinate them. Dark Bargain. So card draw is a little weird in black. Black, it usually, you sacrifice life or whatever. And usually it's in the form of, say, a 3 to cast, lose 2 life, draw 2 cards. This one's a little different, and I like that it's different. This one's 4 to cast. You look at the top 3 cards of your library. You put 2 of them into your hand and the other into your graveyard, and then it deals 2 damage. So you at least get to look at the 3rd card and put one, you get to choose. So if one of them's land, you didn't just draw 2 cards and they were both lands. You actually get to choose one. You can look further down, choose the land, and throw it away. And you've gotten further into your deck and gotten maybe to an answer. So I wanted to try this a little bit and see how that works. And the life loss is minimal in a deck that gains life. So I got 2 of them in there. I wanted to try it out and see how everybody thinks. So whoever gets this deck, I would really appreciate if they can give me their feedback. I'm going to start using it, but I don't get to play as often. And then the rest is all just swamps, except for the last 2. It's 18 swamps and then 2 raiding fountains. Now this is a little weird, and I know you're going to be like, well, why is that in there? It adds a colorless, and the only thing it does is gain you 2 life. But a lot of the stuff in here really does like when you gain life. Like, let's put it this way. Epicure of Bloods, you play a land and they lose a life. You gain 2, they lose 1. Silver Smote, it gets you most of the way to being able to bring them back from the graveyard and put it into play. So it's in there for a reason. A little bit of life gain never hurts. It helps keep you alive longer if for some reason you've lost control of the game. So a couple reasons why they're in there. And I don't really do little stupid stuff like that all that often, but it's a nice little techie thing that you can look at and be like, okay, think outside the box a little bit and have other instances of life gain that people just don't use. All right, so upgrades for this deck are a little weird. So vampires are plentiful. There are so many vampires out there that I just, I couldn't mention them all. I'll give you a couple that you can use. I'll start them off on their mana value. So like 1 drops, you can do a Vampire Cutthroat because it has lifelink. It's not the same as this guy where you don't have to attack. At least with a Vampire Cutthroat, you do have to start doing attacking. The 2 drops got a couple of them. It's got Gifted Aetherborn or Null Priest of Oblivion. Well, actually, one of the better ones recently that they printed was Null Priest. And then 3 drops have a bunch. So you don't have to go into 4 drops if you don't need to, if you have some of these. So 3 drops are like the Vampire Nighthawk. Vampire Nighthawk is one of the best vampires and creatures Magic ever printed. It's 3 to cast, 2/3, flying, lifelink. It's actually really good. And again, I'm going to have it up there and you can take a look at it. Or you can do Veto. Veto from core set 21, where whenever you gain life, your opponent loses a life, and then they can give all your creatures lifelink. So he's actually pretty good here. If you wanted to go more attack strategy, kind of like the Elves deck I mentioned a couple weeks ago, you can do a life drain and gain ability on this one, or you can do combat based because it's vampire tribal. Something like Captivating Vampire can work too. It gives all of your vampires a static buff, and that has a nice cool ability of stealing your opponent's creatures at that. I don't own any myself, and I really need one for my Edgar deck, by the way. And then you can change out. This is a very, like, if you want to do the drain and gain, like, lean into it, you can either take out or add something. So you can take out Epicure of Blood and change them in for Marauding Blight Priests. They are 3 to cast and do the same thing. They're a little smaller on the power toughness side, but they do the same thing for cheaper. Or you can have both in there and really lean into the life gain and then drain your opponent's theme. You can do either one. Some spells, obviously, I like the theory of giving creatures a negative to their toughness to kill them. Recently, that's something I've learned I like. But you can also do some more monetarily expensive things like Fatal Pushes. The new card from Dominaria United was Cut Down. That thing is a beast of a card. That may be... Fatal Push was probably the best they printed in a while, and then they printed Cut Down. And Cut Down is, I gotta tell you, one of the best I've seen. Or you can do Blood Chief's Thirst. It's one of those cards I look at all the time. I'm like, man, I wish I had more. I actually not wasted. I used a lot of them in my earlier builds before I really thought about this as a business. And now I'm down to like 1, and I wish I had more. Blood Chief's Thirst is a really good card, especially budget and non-budget. You could do some card draw, so I like what I have in here, but the card draw like Knight's Whisper or Sign in Blood, they're both 2 to cast, and they're the quintessential draw 2 cards, lose 2 life. You could add, now this one's an interesting one, you could add Sanguine Bond. So it's the enchantment version of Epicure of Blood. So whenever you gain life, each opponent or target opponent loses a life. So every time you gain, they lose, and you can do that. It's kind of like the Blood Bond combo, Sanguine Bond, Explicit Blood. You could add that into this deck too, but there's no reason. That just kills more kind of things. But you could add the Sanguine Bond part because you're doing life gain, and then it'll drain your opponents dry. And then for lands, so monocolor decks are real hard when it comes to lands that fit a specific theme, and this one is a specific theme. There is no black land out there that literally says opponents lose life, you gain a life. There just isn't. However, there is something cool called Castle Locktween. It's card draw for black that uses life as a source to draw the cards. And again, I'll have it up there. And it's a really good card for something like this. Monetarily, it's not really expensive. The problem is I don't have any. All the ones I did have either are in my own personal decks or I've sold at conventions or events. So you can add one of them in there as well. So just a small set of upgrades that you could do for a simple, stupid little vampire deck that literally is just a drain your opponent's life, gain life kind of deck. So any comments, questions, or concerns you have about it, you can always contact me. My contact information is in the description of the video, so you can always contact me for that. Other than that, please do me the favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this out to somebody who may be looking to do a vampire deck. Specifically right now, it's October, or it's close to October, closer to Halloween. And people are really into that whole vampires and zombies, all that stuff. That's the reason why I'm rebuilding this deck, because at my events, people really, like vampire decks, so why not? If you want to buy it, it's going to be for sale. Just because I'm doing events mostly, it's not a problem. I can rebuild it again if I need to. So you can just contact me and I'll go over all that. And that's my time for the week. Have a good one. We'll be doing it again next week. Have a good one.